I've looked at mods that have changed many things. I've looked at mods that changed the heads-up display, mods that have changed the gameplay, and even mods that change the visuals of the world itself. But in this episode, I'm going to look at a mod that changes the way Geralt looks. In The Witcher 3, Geralt of Rivia's mutant status is not quite as obvious to the naked eye as it is in, for example, the first game. He still has the white hair and his eyes are definitely cat-like, but they are not quite as obvious as they were in the first game. And a mod called Lore-Friendly Witchers attempts to change that. And it does that a number of ways. The first and probably most obvious way is the eyes themselves. They are now a bright yellow. Instead of that deep amber colour, they are now very yellow, very bright, and it is extremely obvious when looking at Geralt that he is a Witcher. But there are also some other changes that may not be quite as obvious. For example, his skin is slightly paler and his beard and eyebrows now match his hair better. In the base game, in the vanilla game, Geralt's eyebrows are actually deep black. Now, I have not actually read the books, so I cannot confirm whether this is in fact lore-friendly to the books, but it is definitely closer to the first game, and I think quite a lot of the old fans will appreciate this. If, however, you like the look of the eyes, but you want that sort of hale and hearty look that the base game has, that sort of nice ruddy complexion, you can actually keep that. And indeed, if you want the pale complexion and the whiter eyebrows, you can have that and skip the eyes if you want the more orange eyes. It's completely up to you. There are two mods, one for the eyes and one for the face and hair. So it's completely up to you. But I actually like this. It's not a dramatic change, well, apart from the eyes, but the skin, it's not a dramatic change, but it's enough that it is obvious that Geralt is a mutant. You can see at a single glance that this is the White Wolf. Last week I showed you a mod that allowed you to zoom further out on the main map. This week I'm going to show you a mod that does something similar with the minimap. Now the minimap is very useful. I will activate mine. I'm using Immersive HUD, which hides the minimap until you are using the Witcher sense. And as you can see, the minimap is pretty much the standard one. It doesn't show very much beyond about 10 meters perhaps. You can see the closest buildings, but that's it. But now with a mod called Minimap Zoom Out, if I activate the Witcher senses again, now I can see the minimap, and you can see immediately I can see far more of the town. Even from this point I can see 3 or 4 buildings in. Obviously, as to what you prefer is pretty much personal taste, but this definitely makes the minimap a lot more useful and will probably mean you don't have to open up your main map quite as often. And as you can see, the mod works perfectly with Immersive HUD. The next mod is yet another heads-up display mod, and I make no apology for covering so many user interface mods in my videos, especially this early on, because of course it is one of the things that bothers me in a lot of PC games. They tend to come a little cluttered, especially in the heads-up display. So the next mod is one as soon as I saw it, I knew it was going into my load order and I would almost certainly never be removing it. And it is a mod that hides the buffs. You will see I have no buffs on screen. I actually do have a number of effects. I'm going to press the radial menu button, and as you can see, my buffs have appeared at the top. I can't actually point with my mouse, but you look at the top of the screen, you can see Erden, Quen, Enhanced Weapons and Igni. And they only appear when I press the radial menu button. So if I need to check what my buffs are, I can just tap the button and then close it once again. So I've got the information if I need it, but I don't have it in my face for, let's face it, the next 15 minutes with the 20 minutes with the Igni sign. So for me, this is a very, very simple mod and one that I love. Continuing on with my unapologetic look at user interface mods, the next mod is yet again one of those mods you just take a look at and think, yes, that really is such a simple and yet brilliant idea. This is a mod that adds labels to potions. Swallow, Tawny, if I go along here you can see Necro, that's my Necrophage oil, Spectre, Spectre oil. It's pretty much that simple. It makes it a lot easier to immediately find the potions you need. This is going to become a lot more useful once I have more potions because I don't have to hover over to see the name. Now, of course, you can see the difference sometimes between the shape and the colour, but if you haven't learned that off by heart, this is going to be very useful. If the large, colourful text is not quite to your taste, there is another version. In fact, this is the version I use, and it is a version that has small text with very, well, no background over the potion. It's a lot more subtle, it is smaller, and it's going to be a little more difficult to read if you're on a low resolution monitor or if you're playing on a TV that's quite far away. But for me, this is, well, it's very easy to read, and I think it looks a lot nicer. I'm not sure how it's going to look on a YouTube video. If it is hard to read, that will be because of the YouTube video, not because of the mod. It's actually very easy to read, and as I've said, I prefer this version. And because this is just a simple replacer for the icon, these icons will appear in your alchemy menu as well. The last mod I'm going to show you is not a user interface mod. I'm sure that is a relief to some of you. It is what I would consider a convenience mod. It is a mod that adds auto-looting. And by that what I mean is, when I walk up to this bush, when I normally loot it, I normally activate it, I get a list of things it contains, and we all know it's going to be one ingredient, and I can either select the individual items and take them, or I can press space and take all. But with this mod, I'll activate, and as you can see, I have looted Crow's Eye with no need to go through the menu system, and so I can quite quickly, if I stop walking, just loot all of the bushes in the neighbourhood. It makes it a little more convenient. It also works on sacks like that, so I've looted those, barrels, and so on. Now you may be wondering, what happens if I try to auto-loot something that is, well, classified as stealing? And the simple answer is, you actually get the usual menu come up and the message, so you will not accidentally get yourself into trouble. The mod also adds a kind of auto-loot area function, so I can go close to these bushes and I don't actually have to activate them. I can press the button, which I get to choose, and as you saw, both bushes got looted. And this is very useful if you want to just sort of run around looting things in fields, trying to get components for your alchemy. But don't worry, once again, if you try to loot area of something that is stealing, it will stop you if you have set it up correctly. This mod is actually very customizable. If you go along to the file section on Nexus, the two main files, well, one of them will only auto-loot herbs, which is probably the version I'm going to use, so I can just quickly loot all of the plants for alchemy. And the second version, which loots everything except it will not loot things that classify as stealing. But underneath this you can see several other versions that, for example, loots everything, or will only loot containers that contain one item, or will only loot expensive weapons and armor, and so on. For example, no stealing, one item merged, 0 weight items, that type of thing. It's got a lot of options that you can choose from here, but you can actually customize it yourself. Installing the mod is very easy. Just select the version that you want, download with Manager, and once it's downloaded, activate it as normal. I just activated the version that will loot everything except the no accidental stealing, and it will now work perfectly. Well, it will allow me to auto loot, but it will not give me the radius loot, the one where you press a key and can loot everything in a certain radius. To do that, I have to actually enable the key in the settings file. The settings file for Witcher 3 you will find under your Documents The Witcher 3 folder, and you're looking for input.settings. And I'm going to edit with Notepad++. And to set the key, you need to Control F, find in this case, and I'm going to find square bracket swimming. Square bracket, I believe. Yes, and I need to add a command underneath there. I'm going to Control V, what I pasted later. This is IK_W. This means the W key. If you want to set it for the U key, which I believe is the one he suggested, it would be IK_U equals normal brackets, action equals auto loot radius bracket. Exactly that. He actually explains the process on the front page, so it's not that difficult. I'm also going to Control F for swimming inside square parentheses. And I'm going to add the same line. Control F to find, and this time it is horse within the square parentheses, and the same thing. So I've added that line in 3 places. Save this, Control S, or of course from the menu, and I'm done. Now when I go in and press the W key, I know that's going to confuse a lot of people. Oh my god, W is move forward. I rebind my keys to something else. Please get over it. So I've now set W to be the loot radius key. That function will now be available to me. Now that's probably not a function I'm going to use in game, but if you want to use that function, that is how you activate it. Now customizing this mod is out of scope for this video. It does require a little work on your part if you want to tweak things, but I will show you where you will be making those changes. If you go along to the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt game folder and the mods folder where you have installed all of the mods, you're going to go to Mod, Autoloot, Content, Scripts, Game, Mod, Autoloot, and the Autoloot userconfig.ws file. I'm going to edit that with Notepad. And this is where all the tweaking is done. Now there are some things you can probably tweak yourself without much fear. For example, the Autoloot notification time is currently set to 5 seconds, that is 5,000 milliseconds. If you want the loot notification to last longer, you can change this. And there are a number of other settings of interest. Auto loot radius loot max distance, currently set to 5 meters. If you're going to use the radius loot, the one where you press a button, you could change this to whatever you want and it would loot everything in a wider range. He does recommend keeping it below 50. Of course, I think anything beyond 5 meters is dangerously close to cheating because you just stand in one place, press the button and loot everything from the entire area. You can also limit how many containers are looted at once. Again, this is going to have performance issues if you raise it too much, because every time you press this key, it's going to run a script that runs over a certain area and in a certain number of containers. I would generally avoid changing these unless you really are comfortable putting your system under some stress. The rest of it is code for the filters. So if you want to be, very exact about what you loot, you can change these areas. However, you need to be at least reasonably comfortable with script coding. It's not difficult, but if you are, you don't need me to lead you through this process. And if you're not, I would generally avoid doing this for the sake of this mod. I would actually recommend instead you go along to the file section and pick the one that matches your needs the best. For me, it's actually Autoloot Herbs only. That's what I want this mod for. I want to be able to pick flowers a lot quicker than I currently am. And that is it for today. I, of course, will be bringing you more mods next week, and you are more than welcome to join me for that video. I look forward to seeing you there, and until then, remember, as always, have fun.